Okay, here I am again. I got cut off, so we're going to see if I can continue. So there'll be two videos you would need to listen to. But anyhow, we would go to the drugstore of Stone Mountain Park, no, not Stone Mountain Village, and we would cash in the Coke bottles that we had collected from all over town and cash it in to buy our ice cream. And another really cool memory is the majority of the summer we spent either at the pool, the apartment pool, or either walking to Stone Mountain Park. We lived like an eighth or 16th of a mile from, that's what it seems like, from Stone Mountain Park at the West Gate. So so we could walk in. We usually walked into the park when we would climb Stone Mountain, and there would be a gang of us kids that would climb Stone Mountain hundreds of times the 3 years I lived there, and we had no adult with us. And then other times we would ride our bikes all over the park, and we would the coolest memory of that part was going when we was 12 years old, we could go rent us a canoe without a parent. And we could canoe all over the lake. So here again, it was just a gang of kids canoeing all over the lake. And we would jump out in the middle of the lake and swim. And I don't know how I got back in the canoe, but um, I think we was close to shore. So, and I have great memories of my high school. I had two very close friends, and I have good memories of that, even though we got into a lot of trouble. But you can read my book to find out about that, which it wasn't all that great, even though it felt great at the time, because it led to a very, very traumatic incident with me. So, anyways, okay, I marry at 18 years old. My husband is 28 years old, and we go throughout our journey. And it started out in our relation started out in not a really good way, but hey, it is what it is. I have no shame, no guilt whatsoever how our marriage began. And you can read about that in Reappearing Before Her Eyes, the Isabella LeBlanc story that's coming out hopefully April 2026. So, anyways, so we marry, have two kids, and I was a mental mess, is all I know how to explain it. And I've said this a number of times. I was a mess. But you know what I think now, after going through all this healing counseling, going to counseling, there is nothing wrong with going to counseling, y'all. There's no shame in it. And actually, it takes a very, very strong person to go to counseling and to talk about what's happened to them or what's hurting them, to come out, to help come out of your depression and anxiety. Because if you don't get all that stuff out, that you're living in sadness and pain and guilt, you're going to just continually attract that kind of life for yourself. So counseling was, here I am again. So counseling was a big part in my healing. And my kids were molested just like I was by a family member, and I survived that. My son and daughter survived that. And what I've learned too recently that's helped me free to be able to handle all that, and the fact that what happened to my daughters led her down a very, very dark road, and um, some horrific trauma, that her pain and sadness of what we all lived as a family and what happened to her as a child, that led her down the road of a very dark and hellish adult life for her. So I don't get to see her. I don't get to see my 4 grandchildren. But what's cool, and this is why I'm saying this, is I want to help others to know you can heal from all that. It is possible to have the most amazing life, because that's what I'm living right now. And so I know that we are a soul, a spirit. We are not our bodies. We did not just happen to begin our life here when we were born. We are a spirit that came from God down here to earth to the most horrific school that only the best can succeed and graduate from. So I realize that the time we are here is about this much time, even less than that. So I know my daughter and grandchildren are in God's hands. I have that most amazing faith to rely on, because it's totally like they're gone from my life right now, and I don't know if they'll ever come back into my life. I might not see them until we pass on to the next level. But we are a soul family, and we will come out of this in the other world and we'll be just fine. So that's what I drill on. So in 2009, I began writing my first book, Tell It All, My Son, and I self-published it by Westbow Press, which is a division of Thomas Nelson, and they would not. I was going to publish it as Connie Green. I didn't have any thoughts of Michelle Santana, but they wouldn't let. They said you have to publish this because of the content under a fiction name. So that's where I came up with Michelle Santana in 2009 and 2010, when I was writing this book and published it. And publishing that book led to another hell. And so that's why I wrote To Hell and Back, and I published it in 2018. But going back to picking out my name, Michelle Santana, I love Santana's music, and I really admired my uncle, my mom's brother. I admired him because he named all of his kids with a C, and so that gave me the idea. I wanted to name me, my husband, son, and daughter all with M names. So I came up with Michelle, and Michael was my husband, and Michaela, my daughter, and Morgan, my son. And so me and Mike would talk about what name I should be, and I told him I wanted to be Michelle, and he was agreeable for Micah. And he says, what about Montana? Because Montana was a place we both dreamed of really wanting to go there. And so I said, no, Montana don't sound right, because I don't want people to be reading my book about child sexual abuse and be thinking about Hannah Montana. And I don't know why that thinking came up, but it did. So that's why I told Mike, no, I don't want Montana. And he says, what about Santana? So my husband picked out Santana. So that's how I became Michelle Santana. And why I picked Michelle? Because I had a best friend in my neighborhood in Atlanta, and I dreamed of being able to live with her and be her sister and have her mom and dad for my mom and dad. And you might get a little hint of that when you read Reappearing Before Her Eyes. But of course, I don't use Michelle. But that was her name. And so that's why I picked Michelle. So I was married for 33 years and I divorced 10 years ago. And the last 10 years have been the best years of my life. Me and Mike totally loved each other. But when I met him, we were into drinking and smoking pot and doing a little maybe coke or speed. That's who we were. And that's who I was before I met him. And so that's how I attracted him, because whatever we are inside, we are not our bodies. Whatever we are inside is who we are, and that's what we attract. We attract more and more and more of that into our lives. That's the way it works down here, y'all. That's the way Earth is down here. We attract who we are. So we was attracted to each other, and I wanted stuttering, which is unusual, seeing as I stuttered so bad as a child I couldn't speak, and so whatever. So God, I got off track. Oh shoot, my mind's going totally blank. Oh what was I saying? The last 10 years has been the best 10 years of my life. Oh, me and Mike attracting each other when we were 18 and 28. Um, I wanted to heal during our 33 years of marriage. He did not want to do everything that it would take to heal, and he was an alcoholic. And so that's why we divorced. So the last 10 years, y'all have heard me say, I have been diving into the law of attraction and learning everything I can about it. And when you read my book, you would understand, because I am like, I could almost be shocked myself of learning the depth of what I came out of by writing this novel. It was my third book, and God healed me a little bit every time each book I wrote, and that's how I was able to go deeper into this novel and write it. But I have healed and come out of that shit in the most amazing way because of my spirituality. Learning to understand that I am a spirit. God, the great spirit, is inside of me through the Holy Spirit. That's what I believe. And I believe we go inside ourselves through meditations. The Bible tells us the kingdom of heaven is within us. And we, by our thoughts, what we are thinking about, we can bring hell into our life, or we can bring heaven into our lives. And that's what I'm doing now. I have brought totally heaven into my life. And I belong to the most amazing church, Unity Church of the Mountains, which is typically, I like to believe, which, I've heard this mentioned in church, that we are a metaphysical Christian church. And there's only a very small difference than what spiritual Christianity believes versus the religion of Christianity. Religion is nothing but devilish. That's all religions are, trying to point you into a God, which you would have to deep down into this like I have to understand that. But that's how I feel, because I have come so connected to God's spirit inside of me. And y'all, it's the most amazing thing to heal from. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. But you got to want it. You got to so want to be healed. I know from experience, we can so easily get into a mindset of living in our hell and be comfortable in it. Be so comfortable in that hell that we do not want to do. We don't want to do what it takes to get healed. And that's going to counselors, talking about what happened to you. That is a huge part of how I began to start digging down to be able to release everything that happened to me. There is nothing wrong with going to a counselor. You're a strong person if you go speak to a counselor. I think we tend to be weak and we just don't want to do the work. And the next biggest thing to me, because I totally believe in my faith, that you can heal from anything. I don't see victory. I was raised a Christian in Baptist, in Pentecostal churches, charismatic churches, and oh my God, all of that has so much effed up shit that I went through going through those religions. And you can read more about that in my book. So we have all been deceived. This is what we think, but you can think whatever you want to think. But we have been so deceived by the darkness of life and satanic dark energy to believe that the way we get saved is to say this ritual. I invite Jesus into my heart because of him dying for my sins and shedding his blood. That is demonic. The part about the blood is demonic. God in the Old Testament, that was all written from the perspective of the religion of the Pharisees or whatever. And yeah, all that I really believe, we really believe happened. But we didn't come from Adam and Eve, y'all. We all come from God. We are all a fragment of God. All of us. That story, Adam and Eve, is a metaphoric story. Talking, everything in the Bible I'm learning is talking about the inside of us. That's where we create. All of the billions of people here on earth have created all this heavenly experiences here on earth and all the hellish, and oh my God, ain't we going through the most horrific hellish crap in this world now, because it's all coming to light. And it was not God's intent for them to sacrifice animals. He allowed it because we have free choice. God sent his son Jesus, and Jesus knew he was going to be crucified in the most horrific way. And for me, that is what I love. That's what draws me to Christ, is that love. He came down here anyways to show us the way, to show us how to go inside of ourselves. But he's in all of the stories of Jesus, he says it in a metaphysical way to where the government couldn't grasp and understand what he was saying, because Christ, I don't think he wanted them to know what and how he was teaching. But he was teaching everything that we as spiritualists know to be, how to go inside of ourselves and connect ourselves to the power of God. And that's how he did all of his miracles. We learned from the deep sea, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and another type of scrolls, I can't remember the name, that was found and written during the time of before and after Christ, right in those periods of time. And it talks about what Jesus did from the time he was 12 years old till he was 33, till he began his ministry. I'm not remembering if he died at 33 or started his ministry at 33, but so that time from 12 years, they took it out because the government and the people that wanted power did not want us to be able to have a victorious life. That's what Jesus came down here to teach us. And that's why Jesus tells us we can do more than I have done. But you don't see that in church. I know this is hard for a lot of people to grasp, but you don't see victory in churches. Yes, there are some people that are able to get through all the dogma of the satanic part of the religion and still connect to God through Christianity. I don't know how they do it, but to me, growing up in the churches and all throughout my adult life, I didn't see the victory that should be in churches if they only understood how to live like Jesus came down here to teach us to live. And that's all about love. Loving others, even our enemies. And when I first grasped the idea that there is no damnation, hell, that we choose to go to because we don't do it God's way, that is so not real. Because how can a God of love, God is pure love, he will never send his children to a eternal burning hell. That has been used to scare us, and we have all been deceived, but there are so many of us waking up to this truth. And so I see more people living a victorious life in the people I'm familiar with on social media and in my church. I see more victorious living people than I see in the religion of Christianity. And that goes for all the other religions. All of that has just been made up to keep us fighting against each other. We kill and destroy in the name of our God because of our religion. That is not God, y'all. That is not God. And what's cool is when I learned there is no eternal burning hell, is at first I thought, but what about all these people that do the most hellish, horrific things to us here on earth? They deserve hell. And so I think that is the biggest thing that keeps people from grasping and wanting to be able to acknowledge and maybe dig into this of what I'm talking about, because I know how I thought. I wanted people to go to hell that have done me wrong. That is not the way I think no more. I believe we will all go back to God eventually. And that's why we keep going and going and going through different incarnations down here to earth, to remember who we are and what we are connected to God Almighty, and to be able to live our lives in love and live the way Jesus showed us to live when he walked here on earth and done all the amazing miracles that he did. And I never learned this in Christianity church, of why Jesus went into the temple in such a angry way and tipped over all the tables where the tax leaders were collecting everybody's taxes, and there was all this money and there was all this blood, y'all. There's blood in the temples that come down different parts of the temple from all the sacrifices of the animals that they perceived was the way they could cleanse themselves and get themselves back to God. And God allowed that. But that's why Jesus was angry and went into the temple and did that. And that is why he was crucified. They wanted him as a physical king. He was here as our spiritual king. That is why he was crucified. And that, y'all, is my salvation, because of how much he loved us, and God loves us, to send him down here to show us the way, knowing he was going to go through the most hellish death. That's my freedom, y'all. That's how I know God and Jesus loves me. So, okay, there you are. That's how I become Michelle Santana. Oh, one more thing before I go. Eventually, when I feel that it's the right time in God's timing to put money towards changing my name legally, it will be changed legally to Michelle Santana. As of right now, it's my writing pen name. And when I divorced, the judge asked me 2 times in the courtroom, do you want to go back to your maiden name? And I said no, and he had to ask me 2 times, because I don't think he thought that I was understanding what he was saying, because most women want to go back to their maiden name. And I said no, I would rather stay Green, because me and my husband loved each other. We just went separate ways at the end when I started healing and he didn't. we're still friends. And so, yeah, I kept my name as Green, Connie Green. So, the most important thing I have realized that why I want to change my name and go by Michelle, and I began going by Michelle, and all of the few amazing friends that knew me as Connie before I divorced or right after I divorced was so agreeable to start calling me Michelle because I knew my life was changing, and I knew there was something big that was going to come out of Michelle Santana. So I started going by Michelle 10 years ago. But when I was a little girl, I remember, I don't know, I pronounced myself as Connie. And to me, that does not rhyme with honey. Connie, honey. But there was some way my dad pronounced Connie that as a child it sounded just like honey. So maybe he said Connie or something. I don't remember, but I do remember he would say, maybe holler across the house, honey. And I would think he was calling me, but he was calling my mother, his honey. And so every time I thought he was calling me his honey, it it made me feel horrible, disgusted because of the shit he did to me. So that memory is why I cannot stand Connie. And I'm so grateful for all the people that call me Michelle. I can understand my girlfriends that knew me as a child or teenager can't, is hard to grasp Michelle. But that is why. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next. Thank you.